All right, I got it done. There's only one missing. Did anyone else get it? Go ahead and we're going to start in 1 Corinthians 15. Yeah, we'll go back to Matthew 25 in just a few minutes, which is, in Matthew 25 is what they call the Olivet Discourse. The verses we're going to look at, in which we've looked at this parable before, I don't think we've looked at it every week, but it hasn't been our focus every week. Today it'll be our focus because the topic, August 9th, is the stewardship of our talents. All right? Now, these are all related, not so much the world and time, but life, body, and soul, and talents. Okay? They all have to do with our character, our personality. Let's see, that was... Yeah, our life, meaning our lifetime, that is the process, the whole outlook of our life, what we're doing with our life belongs to God and is given it to us a short time but it's the whole time, but it's a short amount of time, but to use for His glory, not our own. That is our body, our physical bodies, and our soul. That's our personality. It's you might say your mind, but also your desires. So today is our talents, and that's, as opposed to our physical body and our mind, it's how they work together. It's what He's put in our mind that we can do with our body. I know you all know what talents are. So we're in 1 Corinthians 15. Look at what Paul says about himself. And this is where my notes start that you have. But by the grace of God, this is verse 10, but by the grace of God, I am what I am. And His grace, which was bestowed upon me, was not in vain, but I labored more abundantly than they all, yet not I, but the grace of God, which was with me. So he talks a lot about the grace of God in that verse. And I know we know grace being that what God has given to me. But as we kind of are concluding, everything that we have has been given to us by God. But he's pointing out in more detail here how that grace was used or bestowed to him. But he says, I'm the grace of God. I am what I am. Everything I do, who I am, my mission in life, my purpose is by the grace of God. But also it says his grace was not in vain. What do you think what does that mean to you? It says that God's grace that was bestowed on or placed on or let's say given for stewardship to Paul. If he says it was not given in vain, what is Paul saying? Yes, God's not wasting his time. God gave it to the right person. The right person recognizes what he has from God and recognizes how to apply what God gave him. All right? And Paul in his mind is saying, I don't want this to be in vain. I don't want what God has done to be in vain. He selected me. He blessed me with this personality, with these tools, with these talents. I'm going to figure out how to use them, and I'm going to apply them for God's glory. So that it has not been done in vain. Does God apply talents to certain people and they are in vain? Yeah, I mean, it's not even like a topic we need to discuss because it's so obvious that God blesses many people, even Christians, with talents, and they go to waste. All right? So here it says, well, the second one is, God does not give grace abilities in vain. It's not his fault. He didn't pick the wrong person to give the talent to. He's like, oh, why did you let this person have that, unique skill set? Because that person doesn't have the heart for that. He put it on this person who has no skills but has a heart for service. That was the right person. That's our human perspective, right? God, you gave the talent to the wrong person. But no, God gave the talents to the right person, but the right person is making it look like God made a mistake. Okay? That's their fault. That's not God's fault. God does not give talent in vain. It sounds like Paul is kind of suggesting that it could have been a mistake, but no. Paul's just saying, in his mind, I'm obeying God because I don't want to be the one to reflect some mistake that God made, to make it look like that. No, his purpose in life was to glorify God. Use the talents that he was given for God's service. So I have there, all God, the first one, I think all God's children have been given unique grace. Okay, so I know personally, I don't know how you think, but when we talk about God's grace, I limit it to salvation, right? I don't deserve to be saved. And so there's many ways God puts grace on people, and Paul is talking, just like what we said, Paul is describing the talents, the abilities, the opportunities that God gave him. That's all by grace. And it was given and it was prepared, and Paul is striving to find that, and then he's taking advantage of it. The notes, what I didn't have in my notes, but I had here, what makes it unique? Well, there's a lot of things that make God's grace unique. The first one I have there says at birth. Does God give grace differently to people by their birth? So, well, I mean, you don't have a say in it. Your parents don't have a say in it. But God finds a family. You could have been born into like the Hilton family, right? Or you could have been born into like a pauper's family. God has delivered grace to each of them, but they both have different, areas that they can be useful. So the grace is given at birth, and you could even go into like genetics, right? There's some people like their family has skills in this area, and it's bred into their children, or it's part of their upbringing, whether or not it's in their genes. The families just focus on that. So grace given by birth. What about education was the second one I had there, by birth and by education. And that's partially the same ideas as birth, in that if you're in a big family with lots of money, you're probably going to be able to pay for a better school. Well, it's God's grace that put that child in that family. It's God's grace that found that school. But also, like the school we went to, I had certain teachers, and my classmates, they never had that teacher. I learned a lot from this teacher, and they didn't benefit from, but they had another teacher they benefited from. Well, it's God's grace that found the right teacher for me to be a student under, the teacher that could provide and address whatever issues or things that would come up in life. All of that is by God's grace, and that's what Paul's saying. Paul had education more than most people in his day. That was by God's grace. He maybe before. Well, I don't know how he would have viewed it. We would look at it and say he was raised as a Pharisee and he went to school for law and no, but that was all part of God's upbringing of Paul, part of God's upbringing of Paul. And God's preparation for Paul, it was God's grace on him. He didn't have the same grace towards, let's say, Peter, as far as we know. Paul was not raised as a fisherman, but Peter was. But God gave them each what they needed to succeed at what they were doing. Gave them both talents in different areas, didn't he? And they both used them to the best they could, and God's gift or grace of talents was not in vain to either one of them, even though they're completely different people. Personality, upbringing, everything. Go to Job 10. I don't know, this is the one blank that I could not figure out. At birth, by education, and then through upbringing, maybe? I don't know. You could, there's no wrong answer. How's that? Job 10. And I think what we're doing is just establishing what we're talking about when we talk about talents. It's what has been delivered to you at birth, genetically. Some people have skills in different areas. Some people, God trains them, whether or not he picks your school or you pick your school. He uses teachers to develop skills, or even, I think I said this to Mindy the other day, because I keep getting ads for Hollister, where we are, of like local artists, because I follow a lot of art stuff, because music is art. And all these art galleries and the San Benito Art Council, and they're always focusing on like paintings, like people who do paintings. And it's, to me, and they're good paintings, very, very realistic. To me, it seems like painting, like the ability to do this with your hands and pick the right colors and put them in the right place, it just is just a natural thing. It just seems like, it's not my thing, but do people go to school and learn how to be super artistic? Or is it people who are just born with the artistic talents? Well, I think they have to have been born with it. I don't know that you can teach a person who has no visionary and hand-eye things. That person isn't going to go to school for art. I don't know. But to me, music is different. It's like you have to learn. You actually have to study and work at and develop music. But art just comes naturally. So it seems like to musical things is more artistic. Like we should be. Oh, what good job, good work. Well, the artist that paints things, it just like came to him and he didn't even think about it. He just threw it up there. But a musician has to practice over and over again. They have rehearsals. They study the music to write the music. I don't know if you can practice painting. You don't put hours and hours and hours other than doing it, learning how to, that's just my own mind to say. I'm saying some of these things, some of the talents that God gives us are developed, but some are naturally given. But they're all useful to God, but we are responsible to develop them, right? Whether you're an artist or a musician, these things must be developed. Job 10, verse 8. Thine hands have made me and fashioned me together round about, yet thou dost destroy me. Remember, I beseech thee, that thou hast made me as the clay, and wilt thou bring me into dust again? Hast thou not poured me out as milk, and curdled me like cheese? Thou hast clothed me with skin and flesh, and hast fenced me with bones and sinews. So I think it's clear, verse 9, thou hast made me as the clay, not only as clay, but with clay, right? That's how Adam was created. So I have on the notes there is formed by grace. And that includes, I don't know if this so much applies to talents. When he said, even where, verse 11, thou hast clothed me with skin and flesh. It is by God's grace that the skin that you have looks like it does. God chose skin for you. Maybe that sounds weird, but I think there's a lot of people who don't like their skin. There's a few. Or people that want that skin, right? No, yes, God gives talents to different people. No, but your skin, even your bones and the way the bones work, okay? God formed all of that, your exoskeleton, your covering, Does he say something about clothes? Well, thou clothed me. Yeah, clothed me. Okay? It was all done perfectly. God did not make a mistake. It was by grace. Also, he says here, and I'm not sure if I understand what he means when he's talking about the cheese. Hast thou poured me out as milk and curdled me like cheese? That could be, that he's just another way of saying that he formed me. But when it says to curdle me, that sounds like kind of gross. You have experience with cheese. So.
Job went through troubles.
Yeah.
And so curdling is.
That's what I took it to mean. That's what I would take it to mean. So I had in my notes, formed by grace, but tested by grace also. Right? So it was by grace, but the testing that Job went through, that Paul went through, that Peter went through, okay, was given by God's grace for what purpose? For them to develop into usefulness, right? Maybe some talent that Peter had or Job had that was like in the background. They knew they had it. I know that's there, but I've got all this other stuff. But God just curdled their life until, you know what? They have to start working on this talent. They have to develop it. All right? So God develops character by a variety of ways. He forms us and he tests us. And the last one I had on the notes there, from verse 12, actually, thou hast granted me life and favor, and thy visitation hath preserved my spirit. So I also had he leads us by his grace also. And you could there's a variety of characters from the Bible that we can see that through. We're not going to go ahead and go back to Matthew 25 then. Okay, keeping that in mind, that I know we had started by looking at Paul's life. Paul demonstrates it. Job demonstrates it. Demonstrates the acknowledgement that the skills that they have, the talents that they have, are given to God, given by God, which means God owns them. Okay, and God gives them out. Divides them up, provides them for us. They're not for Job's glory. They're not for Paul's edification. They're for God's glory and God's edification. Matthew 25, I don't really want to read the entire parable. You know this parable. Verses, we'll go look just verses 1 through 13. This is the parable of the 10 virgins. Let's just read verse 1. Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were wise, 5 were foolish. All right, so this first set of verses, verse 1 through 13, is about the preparing for the return of the bridegroom. And 5 of them were slackers, right? They didn't prepare, and 5 of them did prepare, of the 10 virgins. All right, so that's the context going into the next parable, and it's kind of the same theme, just a different approach. Verse 14. Why don't we read verse 14 through 16, just 3 verses. For the kingdom of heaven is as a man traveling into a far country, who called his own servants and delivered unto them his goods. And unto one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to every man according to his several ability, and straightway took his journey. Then he that had received the 5 talents went and traded with the same, and made them other 5 talents. Likewise he that had received 2, he also gained other 2, but he that had received 1 went and digged in the earth, and hid his Lord's money. All right, let's stop there. What is money? Because he's talking about talents, which I looked it up. By the way, I refer to my Bible as being a Thompson Chain Bible. I don't know. I finally read the beginning of the credits. He does have a name. Does anyone know his full name? Thompson. It's not Chain. It's Thompson. It's said here somewhere. Frank Charles Thompson. And the original copyright date of the Thompson Chain Bible. Does anyone know the year? It's old. Anybody? It goes back. This version was copyright 2007. Previous copyrights 88, 82, 64, 57, 34, 29, 17, 1908. So this is an old Bible. An old, the words itself, but I'm talking about the commentary that goes with it. Well, in the back of it, there's a glossary and it explains what the conversions are of the money back then with American money and British money. So it converts it to pounds and then it converts it to dollars. And it said like a talent of gold is worth $26,000. I don't know what that I've assumed that would be 1908 value, but it doesn't matter. Talents, what he's saying, talent is actually money. Because I know we're talking about what I said was talent, like your abilities and your skills, but this is about money, isn't it? That's why I'm asking, what is money? Okay, what was it that was left with these stewards, those three stewards that we read? With money, okay? Was the goal, was the focus on the money? What did he actually leave with them? Read it. Let's read it again. Verse 14. For the kingdom of heaven is as a man traveling into a far country, who called his own servants and delivered unto them his goods. So did he give them goods and money? Is the money the goods that he delivered to them? What is important to him?
How they use
The money's not important to him. It's the goods that are important to him. He left them the goods and he gave them the resources, all right, to protect, to grow, to monitor, to steward the goods. All right, so in their stewardship of their talents, okay, money, which we'll talk about another day, the actual currency, that's for another day. The talents that he gave them are to be used to steward his property. Okay, so he left the property behind, and it could be his kingdom, his actual land, his cattle, his family, his buildings. That was all left, but he gave them the money to develop that. So what is the money important to him? The money has to be used, right? And they can grow the money, but that just furthers the goods, right? The parable is about stewardship of money, but it's also about why everybody here have a job? Why did my employer hire me? Because I have abilities. I bring to work skills. So what's important to my employer? Is it money that I bring to work? My only value to him is what I can do, is what I'm able to do. He can, and I have skills in certain areas, like fixing things, right? I'm not good at noticing things like that need to be cleaned or repaired on my own, or I don't get into details, okay? But I have certain skills that other people don't. Other people have skills that I do that I can't or not willing to do. But for my employer, all right, he doesn't look at my value in terms of its currency value. I'm only valuable in what I can do, which if it was me, not an employer, if it's like looking for a spouse, am I looking for someone who could just do something? It sounds funny to say my employer only values me because I'm what able to do, what I offer to him. But that's how an employer has to look, right? As what you can offer. Otherwise, if you can't do this, he's going to get rid of you and find someone who has different skills that he's looking for. So I'm not valuable at all other than what I'm able to do. And that's fine for an employer to think that way. And this Lord, I see as saying, thinking the same way. And I say the Lord, the master that goes on a vacation or goes up to another country. I say he Lord in lowercase l. He only values these people based on what they are able to do. And that's why it says, according to their several ability. He knows one of them has the ability, the talents, and it's kind of just ironic that he gives them money that's called talents. Really, we're not talking about what they are able, their abilities. Okay? He's giving them certain abilities to be able to take care of certain, and someone else, he's like, well, his abilities are different, or maybe they're just not, or maybe I know he's, he hasn't shown me how reached his potential yet. So he's getting one talent, right? Because he does not have the skills. It's the skills or the talents that's actually important or useful to the Lord. All right, so what is money? Well, a currency it only represents a value. That's what I said, right? It's like the paper, even if it's a coin, even if it's a gold coin, gold really isn't worth anything except what it means to everybody else, right? It's only worth something because we say it's worth something. And for me, if I have a gold coin, if I earn it, that's because I had an ability and someone paid me for my ability. So that's just a representation of a value. And the value isn't, dollars and cents. It's what you can do, what your skills and talents are. So money, it comes from the Lord. Well, in both cases, lowercase l and uppercase L, all right, Lord. In this case, the value or the currency came from the Lord who was going on a trip. But, literally, the currency we have comes from the Lord as well, by grace. But where's the value? It says in verse 14, and that's what I read. It says, they delivered unto him his goods. The value is in the goods, all right? And for this parable, the goods is the property, but God's goods is something different. God doesn't, yes, the earth is his, and he cares about the land, he cares about the buildings, he cares about the people, but what would if we were to convert this parable into reality, okay, the Lord has gone away, what is his goods that he's so concerned with? What is it that he wants, that he's leaving with us, that he wants us to use our talents for, to protect and to guard and to, what would the goods be? Like ourselves? Yeah, he wants to develop ourselves, but he's gone away and left us in charge of what's here. And what is it that he wants developed here? It's us, but it's his glorification, right? It's not something physical that we can handle. It's, let's say, his word or the gospel, the message, the good news. He wants us to bring honor to him. And he wants us to use our talents for that, to develop those goods. That's what I say, is good. We're not supposed to focus on the material. Well, goods is material, I understand, but this is just a parable to represent the immaterial, which is kind of an abstract. Is God's glory is what we are to be using his abilities to focus on. So ultimate focus on the goods that belong to the Lord in the parable. He provided the means to manage the interests. The means being the talents or the money, but again, the money just represents abilities. And here, letter C in the notes says the portions were appropriate. What do I mean by that? Well, so one he gave 5. I assume everybody remembers this story. That's why I didn't read the whole thing. You know that he gave, is it 10 to 1? 10 and then 5 and then 1 to the 3 different stewards. But the portions were appropriate. So the one that he gave 10, he didn't just draw, okay, you get the long straw. I'm leaving 10 with you. No, he picked according, that's what it says, verse 15, to every man according to his several ability. So he says, let's see, who can I trust with 10 different talents? And he found the one, and he was proved right. Who can I give 5 talents to? That guy, he's not quite a 10, and he found one he can give 5 talents to. He gave, and he was not disappointed. Now, when he gave one, if what talent is $26,000 in 1908, he gave a lot to that one. All right? I don't know if that's true. I don't know how you can convert New Testament money to current money. Okay, but it was a lot back then. I can't trust him with 10. I can't trust him with 5. Can I trust him at all? And he's like, well, I'm thinking if I was God and or the Lord, let's just hope for the best and give him 1, right? Well, God, the Lord in the story, but also God, gives talents appropriately, just like he said in Paul's life and Job. He knew what they could handle. He knew what they needed to get to be where they needed to be. All right? When I say to get to where they be, to realize why they had those talents, right? And to be able to use those talents. And he had to kernel them to get there. Well, there's no curdling that happens in this story until the very end. So the portions were appropriate. Some interest required more. That's when I say interest, I'm talking about the goods that he left with them in verse 14. So some of the goods required more. So whoever he left in charge of certain things, he had to put the guy that had 10 talents because he would need more talents to develop that. So God gave the talents in proportion, but he also gave the tasks in proportion as well. The one that he gave 1 talent to, he didn't expect much from him, so he didn't make him responsible for too much, even when he left. All the stewards got the appropriate amount for their responsibilities. I see this. Look at verse 24. And this is the end of the end of the parable, and right before the judgment comings. Verse 24, then he which had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew thee, that thou art an hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown, gathering where thou hast not strawed. What does it mean, thou art a hard man? Now he's revealing this about the Lord, the Master that went away, but he's also revealing to us about God. Thou art a hard man. Anyone have any ideas what it? I'm not asking what does the original Greek mean, but what is it saying to you? He's just, just like he said when he gave the several ability. Like he knew, and you can expect him to reward appropriately. Yeah. Okay. So he's just. Anything else? I put he's demanding. Which, to say that of God, God's demanding. Does God have expectations? He gave you talents. What is the expectation? In my mind, I think of expectations. That's worse than requirements, right? But that is he gave those talents to us. They're not in vain. He gave them because he knew what you're supposed to do. His expectation, maybe there's a nicer way of saying that. What would be a nicer way of saying expectation? Like how he expects you to use them. I don't know. I don't have a nicer way to say that. So in the notes, talents are tools. The master has expectations. What is unacceptable? Failure? Is failure unacceptable? Verse 26. His Lord answered and said to him, thou wicked and slothful servant. So what is he I don't want to say accusing. He's commenting on the 1 talent servant, and he said he's slothful. Yeah, so that's what I put. Lazy is unacceptable. Failure, and I say failure, I don't mean you had these talents and you used them the best you could, and you're a failure in life. That's not what failing means. There's people, pastors, people who witness to their family constantly, and God gave them the talent of maybe love or conversation, and they speak to their family over and over and over again for their whole life, and their family never gets saved. Is that their fault? They use their talents correctly and appropriately, and they figured out God wants me to use the talent this way, and I used it for him. To me, it looks like failure, but that's in God's hands. All right? That's not what this guy did. This guy had the talent, but he neglected it, and he even says he's. Did I write it down here? Not in your notes. I thought I did. Well, let's look at it. Verse 24. Verse 25. And I was afraid. All right. So, what caused him to be slothful, or what to be irresponsible with his talent? Fear. And then also verse 26, the Lord answered and said unto him, thou wicked and slothful servant. So he admits fear. But then the master says, slothful, but also wicked. It wasn't the slothfulness or failure that made him wicked. No, it was wicked of him to accept the talent and then abuse it and make a mockery of it. So the master does have expectations, and his expectation is just use it, develop it. And only laziness or, wickedness and slothfulness and fear are acceptable. I go to Luke 19. And I think this is I think this is the same parable. Or at least it's very similar. Okay, they're not talents, they're pounds. I don't know why Luke calls them pounds. Yeah, my footnote says also Matthew 25. So the editor of my Bible thinks they're the same parable, and they're slightly different. Verse 12. Luke 19, verse 12. And he said, therefore, a certain nobleman went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom and to return. And he called his 10 servants and delivered them 10 pounds and said unto them, occupy till I come. And I have in the notes there, occupy, or what is that? What does it mean to occupy? It means like to stand in. But that's what occupy means. But is that all it means? You don't just stand there. You do something, right? An occupation. You're busy. That's why I say stay busy. To do the business of. So when this nobleman leaves with his 10 servants and he delivers them 10 pounds, same idea. It's money, but money is just, what you offer. It's how you use your skills. That's what your value is. He leaves them with they're valuable. And what does he want them to do with it? He wants them to stay busy with it. Busyness is the opposite of laziness, isn't it? Occupy is what our mission is. Or to do his business, not our own business. I don't know, just think about that. What percentage of your time is spent and talents is spent on your business compared to on God's business? I don't want you to answer, just think about it. Go to 1 Peter 5. 1 through 4. The elders which are among you I exhort, who am also an elder and a witness of the sufferings of Christ, and also a partaker of the glory that shall be revealed. Feed the flock of God which is among you, taking the oversight thereof, not by constraint, but willingly, not for filthy lucre, but of a ready mind. Neither as being lords over God's heritage, but being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd shall appear, ye shall receive a crown of glory that fadeth not away. So he's talking, verse 4 at least, okay? After he's saying in verses 1 through 3 about how they are operating their lives, how they are developing and using their talents that they've been given. What happens in verse 4? Just the same thing that happened in the parable of the talents and the parable of the nobleman and the 10 servants. The Lord returns. That's what he says. And when the chief shepherd shall appear, ye shall receive a crown of glory. So there will be, when I say there's expectations, the expectation is that we occupy or do his business with the talents or the abilities that he's given us to be successful in his business until he returns, at which time we'll receive a crown of glory that fadeth not away. Now I'll go back to Matthew 25. I only laughed because I think we were in Luke before, so we would have had to go back anyways. Let's talk about the reward. He actually talked about the reward in 1 Peter 5:4 that we just read. I don't remember what it was. But he also says that here we covers it in Matthew 25 twice. Verse 21. Verse 21 and verse 23. His Lord said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. Well, let's read verse 23 also. His Lord said unto him, Well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of the Lord. So what is the reward for those who are faithful and responsible with the talents? More talents. And I didn't cross it off, just meaning you can eliminate this phrase from the verse. I will make thee ruler over many things, because I think that's that same idea. More talents, he'll give you more responsibilities, right? But what else is in that verse? Both of them, they're identical, the verses. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. What is the joy of thy Lord? Enter into the joy of the Lord. Does that just mean welcome into heaven?
Having fellowship.
It's entering. It's you say having fellowship. It's coming to him, right? It is being welcomed into him, into fellowship, into sharing in his joy, as opposed to which we didn't read how the one talent was treated. I think you know how he was treated. He was not welcomed into the joy of the Lord. Okay, so whether we talk about 1 Peter, 5:4, that said a crown of glory, that's not the only benefit. The benefit is being welcomed into the joy of the Lord on earth. We didn't get the crown till later. But here now, welcome into the joy of thy Lord. So the rewards may be abundant and maybe upcoming, that is, in heaven, but joy of the Lord, that's current. That's real time rewards. And then verse 30, this is what the verse I was talking about that I thought I was covering earlier. I don't think verse 30 is correct. It's verse, we read 26. His Lord answered and said to him, Thou wicked and slothful servant, thou knewest that I reap where I sowed not. Okay, it was verse 30. We already read 26. Look at verse 30. Cast ye the unprofitable servant into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing teeth. I don't want to go into, and I don't know that I have the the knowledge to go into the second part of the verse. I just want to focus on the first part. Cast ye the unprofitable servant. So we have two profitable servants and an unprofitable servant. So unprofitable, we've already determined that he's wicked. We already determined, he admitted that he's fearful. He was described as slothful. Here he's described as unprofitable. What is another word for unprofitable that we might use today that you don't... I could say, for instance, you are unprofitable. And you may not be offended by that. But is there an accusation I could put against you and people are like, how dare you? But it means the same thing? Useless. If I called you useless, how would that make you feel?
Useless.
Well, I'm not going to do that. I may have called somebody that, like when I was a child and when, insulting somebody, but that's exactly what is said here. When you say unprofitable, it means God by grace, gave you all these talents to use, and you were slothful with them. That makes you useless. That's not his fault. Unprofitable, wicked, fearful, and useless. Now, I think, we'll save the rest of it for another time. Actually, I have a whole other section here that's not on the notes here, that is in my notes. This is the Jesus will return. And I can help think my manager, boss, supervisor, has been on vacation all week. And he actually gave me things. He's like, can you make sure to do this before, and he ordered the material. And he has there sitting on my workbench. And he's still sitting on my workbench. Today he's coming back Monday. Does that make me useless? Well, he had expectations, but he's understanding too, But while he's gone, the assistant has the expectations, and now that's the powerful one. Anyway, that's a different story. But I'm just thinking in my own mind, as like the master has gone on vacation or gone away, and he gave me what I needed, and I didn't slack off. I just had plenty of other things to do, If it was a real emergency, he would have said something in a different way. But I did most of what he asked me to do. But it still feels slothful of me, and he's going to ask me if it was done, and I have to explain why it wasn't done and all that. Well, why is it so much convicting when it's a human being? And I think, well, if God's going to come back and he's going to want to see, report on how I used what he gave me, and did I do this and that? Oh, we don't talk about God. No judgment. You did what you can. No, but my boss at work doesn't think that way. But God's not like that. God is forgiving. God is shepherd, a good shepherd. Everyone feel good about what God does. It's like, well, okay, I understand, but can we have a little bit more respect for ourselves and for the responsibilities and the abilities that he gave us? I don't know why I keep pointing to that chair. Anyways. Yeah, so be stewards of the talents, which is, goes along with your life, goes along with your soul. But this is more of the tools that God gave you, all right, to accomplish and preserve and maintain his property. And he gave you the appropriate tools, exactly what you needed. But you're responsible to develop them, to discover them, and to apply them. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for your word. Thank you for helping us to understand and grow. And we ask that you would watch over us now in the morning service, that we would continue to glorify you, and that we would seek your will for our lives. I ask this in Jesus' name, amen.